If you don't think it's funny, we share a different sense of humor entirely. So if you don't like them, next week there isn't one, so you'll be happy. But the week after that, we're back to it. So we're starting our new series for Lent. It's questions, the questions Jesus asks disciples and different people through his ministry journey. We're going to kind of use that as a framework to look at these different things that Jesus encounters and brings forth. One of the things I love is that Jesus asks a ton of questions through the whole gospel. There's never really a straight answer given. A lot of times it's, hey, what about this? He goes, let me tell you a story about something entirely different. Or he'll say, well, let me ask you something. And so we're going to look at those and talk about why, how those help formulate some theological ideas to help us understand this journey that the disciples were on with Jesus a little bit more. So today we're going to look at Matthew 20. So if you want to get your Bibles open to it, it's Matthew 20, and we're going to be looking at 20 through 28. So if you want to get that up and ready, we'll be there soon. But to get us situated, we're first going to look at an Old Testament. Go down. Okay, an Old Testament reading from Isaiah. So I'm going to read it and kind of use this to frame us around. So this is Isaiah 45, verse 3. I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord, the God of Israel, who summons you by name. Great. That Isaiah passage, to me, sums up the thrust of Jesus' words that we're going to be talking about today in Matthew 20. I'm the God of Israel, the God in whom all these things are possible, and I'm going to give you these treasures, these hidden treasures, and the purpose of them is to focus and bring in the reality of who God is, who I am, and his great love for you in restoring the world. To me, the idea of something being completely a hidden treasure is a little bit unsettling. Anybody else? A treasure that completely is hidden that no one knows about. Unsettling? I've seen Aladdin. Okay? Hidden treasures are not meant to be touched. You leave them there, the cave collapses around you, and no one knows that you got them. Even if you found it, it's hidden. Okay? It's a little bit unsettling because deep down there's this longing of the human heart to live to be super significant. But the ways that our world tells us to chase after these things is the opposite of what it means to be the children of the kingdom, to be these kingdom people, is what Matthew's been getting us towards. And so this idea of this hidden treasure kind of stands in juxtaposition to that. There's three specific hidden treasures today that we're going to kind of work our way through that give us this true significance to ultimate greatness that Jesus is leading us towards. And these three things we're pummeled with by Jesus throughout the Gospel of Matthew. But we're going to get it specifically today. These three things are, repeat after me, sacrifice, suffering, service. I never meant to be alliterative, but it worked out. So sacrifice, suffering, and service. Good. Jesus is concerned like a king about this kingdom of heaven that we've been talking with for the last so many months. And to speak of a kingdom is to speak of the king that's in charge of the kingdom and the king's people and the rule that those people live by under the submission of the king. And so a lot of Jesus' teaching is here's how this kingdom is structured. All through Matthew, this kingdom is different than the one of the world, right? This kingdom is not of the ways of the world, and he keeps challenging these ideas of what it means to exist inside of it, to reorient what it means to think about the kingdom, the king, and the people of the king, and the actions of the people that live in there. And so when I think about these words, right, significance, greatness, all these different things that people chase after in these worlds, right? So think of, in your own head, I couldn't think of a specific pop culture like celebrity person to tell a story about, but just get the one you want in your head, right? The person who gave up everything they wanted in order to get to where they were. Actually, I have a great one. This is perfect. This is not a slight to this person who is a absolutely tremendous musician, but they've changed a whole lot. I can't even think of her real name. Lady Gaga. Anyone remember her? What's her real name? It's like Gwen, right? Stephanie, something or other. So she makes pop music, and it's catchy. Everyone, hum in your own out loud right now. Hum your Lady Gaga tune that you have in your head. You've got it. Okay, hum one of her songs when she was still Stephanie, playing in lounge jazz things where she sang jazz songs self-accompanied on piano. They're incredible. If you've never heard some of her old-timey, like when she was still Stephanie, she was incredible, just stupendous. But left behind all of that in order to get to where she was. She makes more consumable things, but she lost a little bit of her musicianship. It's not a perfect analogy. Analogies break down. But you get that person in your head. They gave up what they were to become where they are now. Get it in your head. You have this picture. Great. Keep them in the source of your mind, because there's not too many illustrations are needed to show us that the way that. How many illustrations do we need to show that to get all the way to where they end up being it doesn't even get to what they're ultimately looking for, right? She can be as famous as she ever can be, but ultimately it's always going to need a little bit more, right? If you want to learn how to truly live, then we have to learn to sacrifice. And if we want significance, you have to accept suffering. We're going to get there. And if we really want greatness, it's only found through self-forgetfulness and service. See, the difference between the kingdom of God and the non-kingdom is that we don't live without this pain, but what we do with that pain becomes the testimony to the fact that we live in this new kingdom. This is the story we're going to get to today. The fact is that the path that Jesus lays out for us isn't an easy one. We've talked about this. We've been told that one of the great faulty ideas that have been put forth for Christianity in the last 40-something odd years is that there's this great, wonderful plan for everything to work perfectly in your entire life. In that view, what the world would call this wonderful plan, it would look like what we're going through is a little bit more difficult. Ask any of the disciples, or Jesus himself if you could, was it awesome that they were eventually all put to death because they followed Jesus? I think we have this really unfortunate understanding because we think that this God's wonderful plan for us is about all that we can get out of this world, because there's no eternal perspective. So you're going to see this deep-rooted desire, this means to get to this very end, is hinged upon having this correct understanding of Jesus, what he's done, and this eternal perspective of where we're going and what we're working towards. And that it means the exact opposite of this worldly perspective of get. So John 12, 24 through 26 summarize this a little bit better. I'm just going to flip to it. John 12, 24 through 26. Very truly I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow. Where I am, my servants will also be. My Father will honor those who serve me. Did you hear it? You heard it particularly, right? From the contract language in there? Oh, yeah, there you go. See, if you come to Bible study on Mondays, you'll get some of those little tidbits right there. So this is this little thing. We have to reckon some uncomfortable words for Jesus here. Because essentially he says, how do I know if I'm truly a follower of Jesus? How do I know that I'm a Christian? Christianity is defined by the idea of Christ being in you. And how do I know that I am the one that's received this grace and have cast my total dependence on Jesus? He says the mark of the kingdom is the one that sacrifices everything to follow me. The one that suffers for my name's sake. Who serves others more fervently than they serve themselves. These are what it means to truly be the children of God, right? These are the hidden treasures, right? They're not easy words. This is the treasure you get. You get, do you remember? Sacrifice, suffering, and service. Good, we're right there. That if you want to truly live, sacrifice is the path to life. Jesus begins by putting himself forward into this idea. There's nothing that's demanded of us that's not true of Jesus first. This is the third time in this story in Matthew, right before the section we're going to read. It's the third time that Jesus will predict his coming death to the disciples. It's the third time he said, hey, so here's what's happening. Well, I'm heading to Jerusalem. And when I get there, it's going to not be great. I'm going to be handed over to people, and I'm going to be put to death. This is the third time that he's told his disciples this. It's fascinating, because every single time Jesus predicts his death to his disciples, it's immediately followed up by the disciples talking about something that proves they don't get it at all, that he's talking about his coming death. It's awesome. And I don't think that Matthew arranges it in this way by chance, because the gospel writers were great. So Jesus predicts his death, and then we read this. Matthew 20:17. Now, Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, which is where he said he's going to go to die. Great. On the way there, he took the 12 aside and he said to them, we're going to Jerusalem. The Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and they will condemn and put him to death, and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the third day, he will be raised to life. This is this prediction of death. Notice, he says, as they're going to Jerusalem. Where is Jesus going to die in this prediction? Great. He's going to the place he's going to be killed. Not, hey, I know I'm going to die, so maybe we can become those ancient Jews that built boats and sailed to America, right? Anyone reference? Great. We'll move on. Book of Mormon, hilarious musical. He could do that. Make a left turn, build boats, sail to America, sail to anywhere else, find a boat, get out of here. But it says as they're going to Jerusalem, he predicts his death as they're headed towards this end location. Self-preservation is the natural instinct of the human heart. Because it's hard for us to really believe in the depths of our own being that this life isn't all that there is. Right? Anyone ever sat and thought man, maybe what if this is all there is? Should I do something different? I can't be the only person who's ever had this existential feeling of what if I'm totally wrong? What if this is really all that there is? The human heart, nature, right? It's this little seed of wonder, right? At the same time, we really believe it totally, right? We're constantly struck with this weird dilemma that in the depths of my being, that I'm made for something more than I'm currently experiencing. So we have this push and pull, both this feeling of this is all I have, I need to do better, but at the same time this seed that's but I know that I'm built for something more. Is this a feeling we're familiar with? This push-pull. We're alive today, good. So we're pulled in two directions. I'm afraid that this might be all that there is, but I know that there's something more beyond this, that there's more than just what I'm experiencing right now. This is a real disconnect within ourselves. And so here, Jesus says they'll condemn him to death by speaking of himself, and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked, flogged, and crucified. And it's interesting, Jesus' complete knowledge here. This spirit-filled life, the knowledge is coming through this complete surrender to the plan that was given to him, right? That he turned his face toward Jerusalem, and he didn't build boats and sail to America, right? He turned towards it, even though he has full knowledge of what's coming, right? This fully divine, this fully human person that still aimed in this direction. It's, the thing that Jesus shows us here, right? On the third day, he'll be raised to life. That the way to life, just like it says in John, right? The seeds that scatter and bring forth new life. The way to life is through death. So I'll be put to death, but then I'll be raised again on the third day. The way to life is through his death. The essential question that we ask ourselves is not, am I alive? But what is the quality, the depth, the vitality, the meaning of the life that I'm producing, that I'm a part of? This whole alive but not living. I don't want to do zombies again. I've talked about zombies in here before, but zombies are alive. But they're not really living. Do you see this difference? You can be alive but not living. I look at people talk about, if they found a single-celled organism on Mars, that would be proof of life on Mars. But I don't want to, is a single-celled organism living a life I wish I would have? Do you see this alive but not living thing? So we're going to break this down. Jesus because someone's breathing, right? Just because someone's breathing, just because they're moving, they're talking, it doesn't really make them fully alive, because we were made for a quality of life that is so much more than that. And yet this is the quality of life. This is the break stop that a lot of people choose to live for. I'm moving, I'm breathing, I'm alive, I'm not doing much. Keep it in your head. One of the things that the world is looking for in the church, right, is they want to see what real life looks like. Okay? They look to people what are we living differently than just being alive? Are we living? Right? They look to some people in the church what are they doing? Do they have something figured out that maybe we don't? Jesus says that the way to life is through the cross. And the good news for us is that he goes first as our example, and also the source of this understanding. The kingdom, right? It's upside down. Right? The kingdom first has to be accomplished for us through the king himself. Right? So he goes to death and then he's raised to life. He dies in our place. Death couldn't keep him, but being the author of life, he conquers death through the work of the cross. And our trust in him actually brings his life into our lives now. This is this upside down kingdom. But this is what it looks like for Christians today, right? It's about our first word. Sacrifice, good. It's about our second word, surrender. Good. What does Jesus do again and again and again? Is that he challenges the very core of what we call to do in our individual self. Right? He says, I didn't really call you to be a total, complete individual. I want you to give up everything. I want you to pick up your cross and follow me. What Jesus is trying to get out of our lives, to get rid of, is this false sense that real life comes through our autonomy, our freedom, our decision making, but that the freedom of life is found in complete, second words, surrender to Jesus' upside down kingdom. And we're not free to do whatever we want. That's what the world says freedom is. But we're free to do what's right because Jesus has set us free. He's the perfect example, right? This illustration, this key. If you want to live, you'll never live life fully. You'll be alive technically, but you'll never be alive until you release yourself to Jesus and allow you to be his responsibility, right? To be children of the kingdom is to lay down your life and surrender. So, side note, pause for a half a second. This isn't some weird, painful seeking existence. We're not pain seekers in this. So everyone say it, we are not pain seekers. Great, perfect. We're moving in hope and trust that there's something greater coming, that the pain and suffering or sacrifice in this life doesn't compare to the weight of the glory that comes next. So this is this eternal perspective, which can only come through complete surrender and trust in what Jesus did first, right? It's not a surrender of this or that. It's this total surrender, right? He doesn't just want your problems. He doesn't just want gifts. He wants the totality of you in surrender. And when he gets you, he gets those problems. He gets your gifts. He gets your intelligence. He gets my stupidity, your stupidity, all of it. Everything is totally and wholly surrendered. So sacrifice leads to real life, real freedom, real vitality, but suffering is the path to the significance. And so with this in mind, he's predicted his death. He's told him, this is what's happening. They've heard, pick up your cross. We're going there. I'm going to die. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be horrible, and it's going to be weird. And with that in mind, the mother of the sons of Zebedee, James and John, comes into this picture with her sons before her, and they ask Jesus a favor. We finally get to our question. All of this now rattling in the disciples' minds. 20 through 21. Here we go. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it that you want? He asked. And she said, grant that one of these two sons of mine may sit at your right hand and the other at the left in your kingdom. What was the question? What do you want? We'll separate that a little bit. What do you want me to do for you? Say it one more time. Get it internalized. What do you want me to do for you? One more time. There you go. I don't think we can fault a mother for wanting the best for her children. So we're going to talk about her for a second, and then we're going to scooch her to the side for just a minute. We're not going to fault her for wanting the best for her children. You'll never meet a mom who thinks they have an ugly kid, is the note that I wrote. Every mother thinks their kid deserves to sit at Jesus' right and left hand. Right? This is how moms work. It doesn't matter if you're the worst singer in the whole of the whole world. Your mom is you have the most beautiful singing voice that I've ever heard. I think of the Seinfeld episode where the mom has the ugly baby. And they're like, look at this baby. You know what I'm talking about? And they're like, that kid is not pretty. And I look back sometimes at baby pictures and I go, man, all little newborns look like slugs. And yet we look at them, we're like, they're the most beautiful thing that's ever happened. They basically, if they were covered in mucus, you'd be indistinguishable from a slug. They'd be indistinguishable. But every mother thinks they have the most beautiful kid, the most talented kid. I'm sorry, Ryan. You're past that stage. You don't even know what I'm saying. You look just like me, so if it's a whole thing. But every mom wants the best. So we're going to ignore her. She's doing the mom thing. She wants the best for her kids that she can get. How many conversations have we parents had like that? My kids are especially special, right? I think I go, man, Charlie is maybe the greatest 4-year-old that's ever existed. I don't think there could be a better 4-year-old. And then, my mom watched her and she's like, so she is a 4-year-old, But to me, I'm totally blinded, right? There's this Bluey story that we read at bedtime. It's one of the episodes, and it's where Bluey, she starts to she sits up first, right? Is that how it starts? the mom's in a mom group, and Bluey's sitting up way earlier than she's supposed to. And so she's like, this is great, until one of the other moms, their kid starts butt scooching. And she's like, well, I got to get Bluey moving on this, and like works so hard. And it becomes this like competition back and forth because your kid has to be the best. This is this whole story. And it ends with the mom saying, you're doing great. And then, what's her name? Bingo? No. What's mom's name? Chili. No, that's the dad. You just shook your head. Whatever. She like realizes like, oh, it's not a competition. Anyway, this is what moms do. It becomes this competition. My kid sat up before everybody else. Well, Charlie did this before anybody else. And wow, I can't believe she's already counting to whatever. This is what we do. Okay. She goes before them with this mom instinct, and before Jesus, and addresses the two boys with her. And she's a charming woman. And the boys thought, maybe if I can get mom to go and ask, like he won't be able to resist, because who can resist the pleas of a mom? Who can say no to a mama? And so Jesus, he gets these two brothers that are behind this request. And even with the mother's request, it was pure. She just wants the best for her boys, the desire to see fulfilled, right? All these things. They're not interested in Jesus, but they're interested in what Jesus could do for them and how Jesus would make them look. So he goes past the mom and he goes right to the heart of it. They're not interested in Jesus. They're interested in what Jesus can get them to. Does this make sense? How do we define? How does our time define significance? Right? How do we today define what's significant? It's the quality of being worthy of attention and importance. Right? Put your person back in your head. What they give up to be in the forefront of everyone's mind, to be greatly known, and to be seen as important. Put it right there. This desire to be known, it's this need to be greatly known. It's always a little bit more. The issue is not the desire to be next to Jesus here. That's a good thing. We should all stay as close to him as we can. Wednesday we talked about just so close you're getting dust kicked up on you as he's walking around, right? But the issue is in what they're trying to get out of Jesus. They're trying to feed their own egos, to feed their own longing for self-importance, right? This is what we deal with today, this deeply inflated view of our own selves, right? Jesus comes to completely eradicate that. Just like how moms look at their kids and they go, I can't believe she's already this. She must be the smartest whatever that's ever existed. A lot of times I go, I could probably do that. I'll watch like Olympic athletes. I'll be like, how hard is it really to swim 100 meters and, whatever. If I trained really hard, I could probably get it, We have an inflated view of what we're capable of too. We all think like if I tried real hard, I could probably become like Usain Bolt. I could do 100 meters in under 10 seconds. Look at me. I got long legs. I can make it happen. We have an inflated view of ourselves. That's why I think in the Olympics, they should have a regular human do things next to these Olympians so you realize how far away you are from them. Like, as far away as we are from Jesus and how good we are, I'm that far away from Usain Bolt and running speed, right? I'll never get there. It continues on. Matthew 20:22. Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. Can you drink from the cup I'm going to drink? We can, they answered, because of course. They have a self-inflated view of themselves. You will indeed. I can drink from the cup that you drink from. You will indeed drink from the cup, but you're asking for the wrong thing. Why are you worried about what position your status will be in the kingdom? Is it not enough that you're known and that you know me? It's not my place to give you these things. Jesus once again going to give us the example, right? He surrendered to the will of the Father, even in choosing who gets to be next to him from the kingdom. Let's hear it. Jesus says, you will indeed drink from my cup, but to sit at my right is not for me to grant. Those belong to those for whom it has been prepared for by my Father. So even there, it's surrender to the Father in that moment, right? The Father picked out who's going to be next to me. It's not even mine to give. I'm going to surrender to this knowledge. You're asking for something that I don't even have the right to give you. And what he's showing them is that they don't even understand what it is that they're asking for. You don't realize fully what it is that you're saying, what you're willing to participate in. Because when he says, you're going to drink from the cup that I'm going to drink, they say, yeah, we'd love to drink from that cup. But the question is, like, what cup is Jesus talking about? Let's back up. They're headed to Jerusalem to what? Why is he headed there? Great. He's just got done telling him, right, what he's going to go do. And here he says, that's the cup I'm going to be drinking from. I'm going to drink it down. I don't think you're really wanting to understand, to be willing to drink from any cup when you don't appreciate deeply what is inside that cup. The disciples, especially in Mark, which when we do Mark in I love Mark, and Mark doesn't hold any punches. The disciples in Mark, he stops one step short of calling them idiots. It's my favorite. But here they never cease to amaze me in just how oblivious in Matthew some of these disciples are. You see, what we do know is that these two brothers went on, right? They asked, they know where they're headed. They asked to be at his left and right, to drink from that same cup. They're so proud of it. And here's what we know happens, right? These two brothers went on after the crucifixion. And church history tells us one of them was martyred. James was dragged behind a horse until his, I just pictured in your head. I don't want to talk about it. Sounds fun, though. Then John, we know he wasn't put to death, but he was exiled to an island to live out the rest of his life completely in isolation. Right? Our cultures do everything in its power to avoid this pain and submission. And I think that's why we live longer than anyone ever before us. We work so hard to make sure we're always taken care of. But we're the most shallow culture in human history. Our ability to avoid pain at every cost, to avoid submission at every cost, has robbed us of some true depth. So our emphasis upon our own satisfaction and happiness has robbed us of true significance. So we might go down in history as the most insignificant populace that has ever existed. Our significance is found only when we realize that we're not the center of the entire universe. We're not the center of it all. Jesus is. And I'll lay down my life because he's so good. If we don't have the right vision of Jesus' love for us, for the world around us, then we're not inspired to suffer and serve with him. Right? Suffering is the cure to self-centeredness. This highlighted view of our own ability. Right? I'm still learning that humility comes through humiliation. Right? If I actually did get in a pool with Michael Phelps, I would be humiliated. It's I could probably keep up. He would lap me 50 times before I would probably have to stop and take a breath halfway down the pool for the first lap, which is only 25 meters, guys. The significance is found through suffering, right? Dealing with painfulness of being a parent and not knowing what I'm doing. It's how I realize that I need to find some humility in my abilities. My kids, for lack of a better word, humiliate my ability to parent sometimes. I think I've got this totally figured out, and then I'm unprepared for what's next. It's working through the heartache of disappointing my wife Ashley sometimes. I don't want to, right? I think I'm a really good husband, but there are times when I'm not, and I learn through those because I humiliate myself by forgetting something. My story for that is the first year we were married. Ashley has an extra special holiday that I didn't know was super extra special for her. And the first year it went through, I didn't do anything for this holiday. I got her Valentine's Day gifts, I got her birthday gifts, I did Christmas, I had them all out of the park. And this day came and went, and she said, "I can't believe you didn't do anything." And I said, "I don't understand." I was a great husband this year. I wasn't. I missed what was important to her. As much as I think I'm a great husband, there's always room for growth. Are you with me in these stories? Growing comes through humiliating yourself and your own abilities, right? I only get better at trumpet because I watched and learned from people who were way better than me. And I got to IU and I was like, I'm a pretty good trumpet player. And then I was handed third trumpet in the marching 100. And I was like, boy, I have a lot to learn to become better. And I did. Thank you. Dealing with the challenges of emails and demands that come every single week. I could put a manual together and sell it of other people's view about how churches should be run that I get in emails. If I compiled emails of everyone else's advice about how to run a church or be a pastor, I could make it into a book. Everybody else has great ideas. You know what I'm talking about. Everybody else has ideas, right? They all tell you what you should be doing different. You're with me? Or for your own job, right? I don't even know what you do. Somebody else will tell you you could do it better. So you could put a manual together of it. And these things hurt, right? The emails that sometimes you get that tell you this, or that, they hurt. I think it's awesome to read an email where it says, your sermon was awful yesterday. It was horrible. I didn't learn anything from it. I don't even know why you bother sometimes. And if you don't think I've not gotten those, I got piles of them I can show people. That's the key to significance, right? Lord, what's true about what's being said to me? And how can I do better? What do I need to repent of? Because I find that every time I'm willing to take a low road and take a painful path, it's created growth. Every time I'm willing to say, what am I going to learn from this? I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to whatever. Every time I try to avoid the pain, it's created and stunted that growth, right? Every time I go, I'm going to show them. I'm going to, like, boom, I don't grow from that. My thing is, like, as your pastor, right, the one thing that you can learn from me is that it's better to be honest about your shortcomings than to live this, like, false pretense of some unachievable holiness. That's why I tell you guys, like, I don't have all the answers. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to just do my best. I hope I'm an example of how to continue to grow. You want people to believe because people see. You want people to believe because people see right through lies. Right? Our significance is found in the fruitfulness of living through suffering. What refines our character and brings about real meaning is this idea that you can let suffering create bitterness inside of you, or you can let it transform you and to become a useful vessel for the kingdom. Right? Jesus doesn't promise to remove it, but he promises to be with us. Matthew 20:24. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant with the two brothers. That means mad. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them with their high officials exercising authority, but not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life as a ransom for many." Is greatness defined by being distinguished, this eminent superior to those around you, in a position where everyone else serves you? Right? This is what the world says. Give up everything in order to get people underneath you, that you step on and that they do whatever it is you want. But he says, but not so with you. But not so with you. Greatness in the world is determined by your status, but in the kingdom it's determined by your function. Right? The greatness of the world is a status. It's this person's position. It's how famous they are. It's how much power they have. It's how much influence they have. It's how much money that they have. And Jesus says, not so with you. In the kingdom, it's a function of being a servant. We follow a king who was the chief servant, right? He says the Son of Man didn't come to serve, but to be served. But to serve, not to be served. I almost made that weird. Didn't come to be served, but to great. He's the great trailblazer. He goes to death first. He didn't come to be served, but he came to serve, to be that example. The key to greatness is found in the willingness to be poured out for one another. That the authenticity of the community is derived from your love for each other. That love is not defined by like, hey, I love you. I'm so glad I got to see you on a Sunday. But a love that says, I'm there for you. Right? It's community function that ought to be making sacrifices for each other and serving each other. That the thing that actually creates within us to those on the outside of faith that they look at and see, right? This communal living, this sacrifice for one another, that's what people see and say, man, there might be something to this kingdom Jesus thing. The significance is not what the world thinks about me, but what God thinks. It's not more important for you to hear these words. Think about these words that, well done, good and faithful servant, or the praises of man. Would you rather get to the end and be like, man, a lot of people on earth said I was a great person. They just said I was so important and loving. Or, well done, good and faithful servant, right? The world eats up celebrities and spits them out. It just chews them apart. Like, think of your favorite 90s band. They barely exist anymore, guys. They are on tour and they have a different lead singer now. I'm sorry. They spit them up and chew them out. The greatness actors, the top tier of everything, fade into existence. My thing for that right now, I'm sorry for a sports analogy, but it's perfect. It's been on my brain for a minute. Right now, the discussion in the NFL world is Patrick Mahomes the second best or the best quarterback in the history of anything? And I go, well, first of all, it's Tom Brady. I'm not even a Patriots fan. It's Tom Brady. He's the best. If Patrick Mahomes gets 9 Super Bowls, we'll have a conversation, right? But you know who's not in that conversation anymore? My favorite quarterback, Peyton Manning. He's not even in the discussion anymore. They're like, he just didn't win enough Super Bowls. He got 2 of them. That's a lot in my mind. Chewed up and spit out. Peyton's not even in a conversation anymore. He's like 3, 4, or 5 now. You just get chewed up and spit out. As great as everyone thought of Peyton Manning, he was the best that anything could ever happen. He's the pinnacle of all of whatever. He is not a discussion anymore. And someday it'll be Tom Brady for all his accolades. Someday it'll be Taylor Swift. Someday it will be somebody else. Everyone gets chewed up and spit out when your significance is garnered only in what the world thinks about you. So let's give worship where it's due, right? Not to this, right? Give Jesus what's due. Give it to Jesus through total surrender and suffering to allow him to do whatever it takes to make us men and women after his heart. That total service to the kingdom is played out by that sacrificial love for one another. And that when we begin to see more and more people in this way and more knowledge of the saving grace of Jesus, it's only when God's people truly reflect the Jesus in whom they claim to believe. And that's, I hope, sitting deeply in your heart to bring about real transformation. That through this understanding of what we still have to grow, this submission, that this humiliation, this path that we're called towards, that we can bring about real transformation to become kingdom people. The question Jesus asked, right, what do you want me to do for you? I hope we want to be transformed into the people we were called to be. Whatever that means. On Wednesday we talked about getting dusty on this different stuff, and sometimes it means you follow Jesus down roads you weren't sure you were going to go down before. That comes from true submission and surrender. Because the other path might be to go somewhere else and make my name.